Welcome to Your Future Starts Now, the go-to podcast for extraordinary women who are ready to step into their next chapter with authentic confidence. I'm your host, Gia Lacqua, empowerment coach, motivational speaker, children's book author, and girl mom. Whether you're a corporate powerhouse or an entrepreneur, this show is designed for you. Your Future Starts Now is more than just a podcast. It's a movement towards rewriting the rules of success for high-achieving women. Are you ready to get unstuck and step into your next chapter? If so, you're exactly where you need to be. Your future starts now. Welcome to Your Future Starts Now. I'm your host, Gia Lacqua. I want to thank you for tuning in today. I'm so excited to introduce you to Chief Empowerment Officer and Life Coach, Tonya Kay. From paddleboarding the Boise River to revolutionizing lives, Tonya helps high-achieving women shatter overthinking and perfectionism to lead with authentic confidence. With a journey from corporate stress to empowered living, she guides others to break limiting beliefs and rediscover joy at any stage of life. Tonya's unique framework and fearless approach have transformed countless lives, empowering women to silence their inner critic and achieve their full potential while balancing success with genuine fulfillment. Tonya, so happy to have you. Welcome to the show.
Gia, thanks for having me. I'm so excited. I have been waiting for this day for us to connect.
Excited to chat with you. I think there's a lot of overlap in the work that we do. So really looking forward to this conversation.
Me too.
So just so our listeners can get to know you a little bit better, tell us a little bit about your backstory and what led you to the work that you're doing today.
That's such a great question because I feel like I almost fell into it by accident. Some of the spaces as I've come through life, my 20s, 30s, early 40s, I found myself in positions where I was a go-to person for questions, for answers, for honest feedback, for those types of things. And it really started to evolve for me when I started down my own journey of self-development and trying to get unstuck, I guess, if you will. I hear that a lot. I feel like I'm just stuck, but that's really how it started. And when I started to change, I think more people saw that and they were like, what are you doing? Can you help me? Can you just help me? I'm stuck, or my mind is, not right or wrapped around this thing. And that's really how coaching started for me.
Wow, so interesting. So I know you said you kind of fell into it, but it also sounds like there was some natural gravitation, right, that people had towards you for a particular talent or skill that seems to come naturally to you.
Well, it seems to. The thing is that I don't know, maybe you find this as well. I believe if people are coming to you for feedback or trying to get unstuck, they don't really have time for beating around the bush or being indirect. And so I feel like it's an honor for them. We're honoring them to be honest with feedback and really hold up the mirror for them so that they can see themselves. Because a lot of times, and I think you know this with your own coaching and your own, the way you apply things, is it's about the questions that you ask. And sometimes those hard questions are exactly what we need.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's also good to clarify for people who are still not clear on what life coaching actually is. I think that's a great description, right? Because some people think of it as, Tony Robbins, we're here to pump you up and, tell you what to do. And it's so far from the truth, right? It's really about finding your own answers and asking those deep questions for introspection and reflection, and then helping to provide clarity in the framework to move forward. So I love the way you describe that. Now, when you talk about your own self-development journey and you felt stuck and how you got unstuck, can you talk to us a little bit about what precipitated that for you? Was there a particular event? Was it, a series of events that sort of led up to that point in your life? And at what point in your life was it? And so maybe talk to us a little bit about leading up to that journey.
So the interesting thing is It was kind of a culmination of a few things. And I
Yeah.
think that I have two families. I have the first family, right? The older kids. And I was a single mom for a long time, running through that. And that was survival mode.
Yeah.
And just as the last one was leaving, graduating from high school, my current husband and I started dating, and I started having kids very young, and he started later. And so when we met, I was like, oh, this is so fun. I love this. We started dating, and he had a 3 and a 5-year-old at the time.
Wow.
So I was really, as we progressed in, thinking, well, gosh, I've raised kids before. This ought to be pretty easy. Okay, no. Let me just tell you right there. It's a whole different role. And so what I really started to understand is the role that I had set up for myself, or the identity that I had as a badass mom, right? Single mom.
Sure.
That's not the same role you take into a new marriage with bonus kids. And so that was a whole new space for me. And that's where it really kind of started shifting, because I didn't really know who I was in that space. Like, I don't know how to show up here. And that's how the self-development journey started for me, was really because I'd identified myself as XYZ, and Y and Z were now gone. And so now I was just stuck with X.
Yeah.
And so that's really how it started. I started reading books. I started listening to podcasts. I signed up for we talked about Tony Robbins. I signed up for a Tony Robbins thing, right? And it took all of those things to really come out of it. But what I really started to understand was I had tied my identity to all of these roles that I play. And that was what was keeping me unfulfilled, because I wasn't really honoring myself and trying to find out who I was. That was where the work started. I had no idea that I could be everything I wanted to be. I thought I needed to be this person or that person or meet this expectation. And that's why I felt so out of sorts, is because I was trying to live this identity or this space that was based on everyone else, how everyone else thought I should show up. And so that's where the work started.
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing. That's incredibly powerful. First of all, I love the term bonus kids. That's amazing.
They are
I love
truly
that.
a bonus.
That's
I love
amazing.
them deeply.
Of course. Of course. And so, I think what you said is really important. I want to go back to the identity piece, because as high achieving women, I think our identity does become deeply entwined in the roles, as you said, professional and personal.
Yes.
And to your point, that can lead to disconnection from our true selves. And the identity piece is, I think, a commonality for women who are going through some sort of, where they feel stuck, like you said, stuckness or burnout. For me, it was a burnout, but it's sort of this identity crisis,
right,
of like, who am I and what am I doing? Right. Because we get so wedded to the identity, and then we become really scared to let go of that identity or evolve into a new identity. Right. That can be really scary too. So talk to us a little bit about your journey and sort of how you became unstuck, and how did you go back to honoring yourself?
How much time do we have here? No. So, what is it really just opened up for me. And I know the listeners can't see what's behind me, but there's a bike on the wall. And that bike really started the whole story for me. And that sounds so weird. It's literally just this metal piece of art. It's a bicycle. And I had no idea when I bought it what it was going to mean to me. And so the first part of that story is that I was out on a sales call. I was in a different business at the time. And we were walking through this store where we were meeting the client, and this bike was along the wall, and I found myself paying for it within seconds. I had no idea why I needed this $100 piece of metal, no idea. And it literally sat under my stairs for years. And when COVID hit, I created an at-home office, and I got rid of the guest bedroom, and I needed something to put on the wall. And I was like, where's that bike? I almost got rid of it several times. And I'm sitting in my office one day and I'm looking at it and I'm like, I think that my life is just very much like that bike. All the parts and pieces that it takes to balance and to move forward are evolved into that bike. And I really started creating these concepts around what the acronym bike would stand for. And so literally, this is what it is. It's the B stands for be you, right? And we'll go into that. I stands for insight. K stands for kindness. And E stands for engage. Now, how does that help me get unstuck, right? The first part of just being you is really understanding that in order to belong and to be really present in your life, you have to be just you, not anybody else's expectations, not the single mom that did this and now the bonus mom that's doing this, or the whatever role or title I'm at work or whatever. It's who am I really? And I started diving into my core values and what matters to me. And when I tied that who I really am to my core values, which are gratitude, connection, right, and love, once I started running everything, all of my boundaries, all of the things through those core values, I really could show up more as myself. And that's how it started. And then instead of getting stuck in my head, oh gosh, when I'm meeting new people, is anybody gonna, what if I say something stupid, or what if they don't connect with me, or what if they don't like me? I changed it to, I wonder what insight I can learn. And that's where the I is. Kindness is very simple. Just be kind to yourself and to everyone else. And the E that stands for engage is probably the most important part, because it's not engaging when you're sitting across from someone and they're scrolling on their phone or they're disconnected. But when you're fully present, being you, always asking questions or looking for insight, showing kindness and love, you can be more engaging. And that's what we're looking for, is that engagement, that connection. And Brené Brown pulls this all together for me. She talks about connection being the energy that's created between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued. And so when you put all of those things together and get on your bike and take your bike everywhere, you really can show up fully as yourself without everyone else's expectations, without filtering who you think you should be, but just really being all of you. That's how it came together.
That's incredible. What a powerful story. That's so incredible. I love that. And now, are you a cyclist?
No, there's another story there.
Another story for another episode.
I did for a while, and then that there was a whole story that came with that.
But there's something that drew you to the bike.
Yes, I don't even know what it was. I honestly, I'm literally walking through this store. These people sold fireplaces, and they had housewares, as well. And I can't even tell you what drew me to the bike. It was just meant to be. It was just meant to be.
Intuition, right? The universe giving you a sign or a signal. I think that's such a beautiful story. So I want to just kind of, go over what you said in terms of the steps that you took. And I love the acronym bike of, be you, insight, kindness, and engage. I hear you talk about sort of a mindset shift in, challenging that inner critic and reframing sort of how we view ourselves and other people. The authenticity piece is really important. I love what you said about getting in touch with your core values, knowing who you are, right?
Yes.
And it's really hard for us to turn down the volume on the external noise and
Mhm.
expectations and tune in. But when you can do that, it's so incredibly powerful. And then the connection to others, I think is another important piece, and engagement, being present, also so powerful and so important. I love that. And so what do you think of the clients that you work with, in your business, what do you see as some of the biggest challenges that high achieving women are facing today?
The first one that comes up is really learning to they're living with everyone else's expectations, right?
Yeah.
This is what success looks like. This is how I should show up. Or this is what my view of who I should be, right? That there are all those things that come to us from generational beliefs to, the friends and family that we're surrounded with.
Mhm.
The other thing that I see is people pleasing. And what happens with that, especially as a high achiever, you hang on to too many things instead of learning to delegate. And here's what I hear a lot. I hear, I'm just so overwhelmed. I've got too many things on my plate. Yes, I get it. Okay, so how are we going to learn to delegate here? Well, when I look at my team, they're so busy and they're so overwhelmed and they're so this and they're so, and I'm like, okay, well, this is where we need to start.
Yeah.
Right? Because isn't our goal as leaders to be a really good leader, right?
Mhm.
And we can only do that if we learn how to empower others. So delegation is part of that, in learning what's important to them, how they like to see it, how they like to receive feedback, how they feel, how your teams feel engaged. And
Mhm.
when we start to learn about our teams and what's important to them, then we can look at the load that's on our plate, right? That's on our docket, and say, okay, I really can break this apart and empower everyone. And they can be doing things that they really enjoy doing and that they're really good at. And it simplifies everything.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And I've seen that a lot over the years too in my um, my former professional life. And then with my leadership coaching is,
Mm-hmm.
that fear of letting go
Yes.
and the fear of, being able to empower others, because the fear of it not being done correctly, of it not getting done
Yeah.
on time, right? People, it's not going to be done the same way I would do it. And there's that control
Mm-hmm.
element that can be really powerful. But, similarly, I tell people that, you're not doing your job as a leader, and you're doing your people a disservice if you are not giving them more responsibility and ownership and empowering them. And then that
Yes.
allows you to then be, of course, more strategic.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard. It's a
It
really
it
hard
is
shift,
hard.
no doubt.
I think part of it too is really learning how to communicate. I can't even say the word, right?
Mhm.
Communicate in a way that is clear, and understand how your people communicate,
Yes.
right? What they hear. Here I see this a lot, and I'm sure you probably do too. Well, nobody really hears me because you'll say something as a leader, you'll say something once or twice, and the expectation is that they got it. And I don't know about you, Gia, but it takes me a couple times
Hmm.
and time to process what I've
Yeah,
heard,
sure.
and then time to ask the question to make sure I've got it clear. And
Absolutely.
so by telling someone one thing one time and expecting them to get it, you're setting yourself up for failure
Yeah.
100% of the time.
Yeah.
And so it's literally learning how to go back and communicate. And there are so many different ways of communicating, right? We've got the people that are storytellers, you've got the
Hmm.
people that are bullet pointers, you've got the people that are cryptic messengers, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Right. And then you've got the difference between texting and emailing and having
Yeah.
a verbal conversation. It's a lot.
It's a lot.
But
Yeah.
it can be more simple. I think we're making things too hard.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. There's the communication style in terms
Mhm.
of how you deliver and receive information. And then there's also I think the other part you're touching on is the learning style, right? And how we learn best. And both of those
100%.
things are going to vary
Mhm.
from person to person. So really understanding what that looks like for yourself and what that looks
Yes.
like for your team members is really important.
Yeah. What do you see in your practice around
You know,
communication?
yeah, the communication is tough. I think with the boundary setting, I think, people have a hard time with boundary setting. And I think a lot of that comes down to communication is
Mhm.
and holding to your commitments to yourself. But I do think communication is hard hard for some women because of how they will be perceived
Mhm.
as, too bossy, too bitchy, too
Oh my gosh.
demanding, right? Like the
Yes.
list goes on of
Yeah.
the things that we tell ourselves, the stories we tell ourselves and how we're going to be perceived. And that
Mhm.
can, I feel like, hold us back from the communication that needs to happen.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
Too much. You're
Yeah.
too much,
So
right?
you're too much.
Right?
Exactly.
Because someone told you somewhere earlier in your life that you're
Yeah.
bossy, and it
Yeah.
was supposed to be bad or
Yeah.
and what oh, so many stories. So many stories.
It's funny you say that. It is true. We hold on to those identities that people
Mhm.
have given us. They're not even our own identities, right? But some sort of label that's stuck
Yes.
with us. And I will never forget, Earl, I was very young, but I remember somebody said something to me that was intended to be an insult. And I was just so confused. They said to me, "You're so righteous." And I was like, okay, I think that was intended to be insulting, but I'm not sure that I'm taking it that way. I'm like, that's not necessarily a bad thing. And then I went on to have a 20-year, career in ethics and compliance. So clearly it was something that worked to my advantage, but
Yes.
it is important to recognize like how those labels and messages can stick with us. So
Mhm.
it is really fascinating. Um,
Yes.
yeah.
That's a I yes, I can go back in several spaces in my life and see where that you're so bossy or you're so,
Mhm.
you talk too much or whatever, right? Or you
Yeah,
don't talk enough or
yeah,
all of those things.
yeah,
And you have to think about where that information is coming from.
totally. Too serious,
Mm.
not
Oh,
serious enough.
mhm. Mhm. Oh, all of it. We could
Yeah.
have we could have a week-long conversation about this
That
stuff.
would be amazing. We might have to do that. Have people call in with their stories, right?
I love that. That's a
Yeah,
great idea.
yeah, yeah. There's everybody's got them, but to your point, it's really identifying them and
Mhm.
challenging them.
Mhm.
Yeah, is important.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that we so want to feel like we belong somewhere.
Mhm,
And a lot of times those stories that we've told ourselves, uh, we end up filtering uh, how we show up, what parts of us we allow others to see. And when people only see little bits and pieces of you, they can't possibly know all of you, which is
mhm.
why we don't feel like we're seen, heard, or valued because people are only seeing little micro parts of us. So when we start letting go of those identity pieces and just embracing our weird, quirky, fun, silly, goofy pieces,
Sure.
that then people really can
Yeah,
honor you
yeah.
and love you the way you are.
It's a great point because we often hold those pieces back, right? The funny, goofy, silly pieces
Yeah.
are reserved for a very few people in our lives, right?
Yes.
Very specific times. We're
Mhm.
very guarded, we're very filtered, and how we show up at work is different than how we show up, at a family party versus, socializing with our friends. And so, it's that identity or that persona we put forward based on the
Mhm.
environment. But to your point, holistically, when we look at all of the pieces that make up who we are, that's very different than what people have, a glimpse of.
Yes.
That's
Yeah,
a good point.
absolutely.
Great point. I
How
love
do
that.
you do you do that yourself?
I used to.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I used to show up very differently in the different facets of my life because I felt like it was first I thought it was expected of me,
Mm-hmm.
that I would show up a certain way. And then I realized, that I sort of had imposed those expectations on myself after a while.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like, in the corporate world, the blazer, the makeup, right? When those things were on, I was a person. It was almost like, you're in character.
Yes.
And then, I talk about this when I do my keynotes and seminars and workshops. When you take off that blazer, when you take off the makeup,
Mm-hmm.
right? When you take off your bra at the end of the night, that is a very different version of you.
Yes. You could, yes, I agree 100%. And so what was the trigger point for you, or the turning point that you recognized that you could show more of those things without filtering out the best parts of you?
Yeah, that's an incredibly powerful question. So I think, a couple things. One is I had experienced burnout, really significant burnout, where I realized how disconnected I was from myself, and I had to
Mm-hmm.
really take inventory of how I was showing up, and do some, started my sort of journey to self-discovery and healing. But I would say that I felt very conflicted. I felt very conflicted, and I felt at odds with who I was. And so it sort of forced me to take a step back and evaluate, how I was living my life. And I hear that, unfortunately, I hear that a lot, that it comes to
Mm-hmm.
that point where people are
Mm-hmm.
just physically and mentally burnt out. And, you run yourself into the ground. And
Yep.
then that sort of prompts this inquiry of like, what am I doing?
Yes. I think that's probably the most powerful question we can ask ourselves is what
Mhm,
are we doing here?
mhm. Yeah,
How did we get here?
yeah,
Let's evaluate.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then really looking at, am I happy? Am I fulfilled?
Mm-hmm.
Is the definition of success that I am working towards my definition, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it someone else's definition? So,
Yes, we can ask those questions like, am I
Mhm,
happy? Am I fulfilled? But, and then, I mean, a lot of times the answer is no, right? It's
mhm,
very simple.
mhm.
No. So then the follow-up question in my mind is, so what does happiness and fulfillment look like?
Yeah.
And how does that version of you feel and live that life? Right?
Yes.
What does that look like? That's the part of the journey, right? Is being able
Absolutely.
to have that forethought into what does it really look like? How am I going to define this? Or how am I defining this?
A
What am I
hundred,
letting go of?
a
Mm-hmm.
100%. And I think, what's really hard in that process too is sometimes admitting to yourself
Oh,
that
yikes.
right? That
Yes.
the answer is no, because you put on this facade that, yeah, of course I'm happy. Of course I'm fulfilled. Like, look at all the things I'm doing and I'm successful, quote unquote, successful on the outside, right? So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the hardest thing to do is admit to yourself that, like, I'm not happy, right? In this
Right.
part of my
Mm-hmm.
life, or I don't feel fulfilled in what I'm doing. And so that, holding up to your point, holding up that mirror and having
Yes.
a conversation with yourself sometimes can be the hardest part. But yeah, once you're able to sort of work
Mm-hmm.
through that and then redefine what that looks like for yourself, it's
Yeah.
incredibly powerful.
Well, the interesting thing too is that I have a great life. I
Mhm.
have a loving family. I have a great job. I make good money. I've got all the things I thought I ever wanted.
Yeah,
And so shouldn't I be happy?
right.
Shouldn't I be more grateful? Right? I hear that a lot. I've got a great
Mhm.
life. Why am I not? I mean, we can go down this path. This is like Alice in Wonderland, down in the
Yes.
rabbit hole kind of thing. But seriously, that I hear that all the time too. Well, I've got a great life. Shouldn't
Yeah,
I be happy?
yeah.
It's everything I've ever wanted.
Mhm.
So that's a whole nother part of the healing
Yeah.
is that, yeah, you have everything you ever wanted. So now when we're setting out our goals and what we want, why is it that we want it? And what will What will we gain from that? What will we be? Who will we be? What are we looking for? Really identifying all the pieces instead of just pick the goal, go for it.
So powerful. And I think you're right. I think so often we're checking off those boxes of life that we think we're supposed to check off, right?
Oh, that is well said. Yes, checking all the boxes.
Right? And then we get there.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, now what? Right? Like this, I'm supposed to be happy. I'm supposed to be fulfilled.
Yes.
Supposed to be quote unquote successful, but I don't feel it. And then there's that guilt.
Oh my gosh, the guilt and the shame.
And the shame.
Holy moly. Yes.
Yeah. So I think it's, to your point, working through that, and really trying to figure out what that means to you and what that looks like and where you're in alignment and where you're out of alignment, is so incredibly important for all of us. So I love that. So Tonya, as you think about your definition of success, we talk a lot about success and redefining success. I would love to know from your perspective, how do you define success today? And maybe how has that evolved for you over time?
So if I start with what I used to think success was, it's easier for me to kind of back into it that way. I used to think that it was, once I hit, my whole goal was to hit 6 figures by the time I was this age, and then multiples, and then you're like, well, okay, now what, right? And one of my measures of success was not just the financial piece of it, but in my 20s and 30s, and more so in my 30s, I thought, oh my gosh, I cannot wait until I get to 40. I could not wait, because there was something about 40 for me in my head, in my brain, that I was now going to be adorned with this sophistication and grace. And I'm still waiting, and I'm into my 50s now. But what I recognized is that was a persona that I was reaching for, because I'm just a simple country girl. I grew up in a small town, very simple country life. And I really was looking for, like you said, the blazer and the makeup and all the things. And those things are what I thought success was.
Yeah.
Right. And that I was also raising these children that were going to do great things in life. And they were XYZ. Right. And my children are amazing, and they are doing XYZ. But that, it didn't define success for me. So when I started down the path of self-discovery, now coming to this point, success for me is being happy with who I am and how I show up every single day.
Yeah.
And embracing her, right? And I talk about her as almost a third person, but she really is coming along for the ride, and she really guides me, right? And if she isn't happy, if she isn't like fulfilled, and she doesn't use the tools that she's created, then that's where it all kind of falls apart. And just because I am a life coach and I guide people through this doesn't mean that I don't also have days where I'm like, woof. So success is really, for me, that space of showing up as the best version of myself each and every day with grace and gratitude.
Amazing. So beautifully stated. And I love what you said about her. It's almost easier if you give, your authentic self or your true self a different name or identity. Yes. Right? Is there something weird about, like, it makes it easier to think about, how am I going to make her happy?
Yeah, because if you treat her as your bestie, right? Your best friend,
very different.
Then it's so much easier to honor her and really feel like you're honestly taking care of yourself.
That's incredible advice. So Tonya, what's one thing you want our listeners to consider doing differently or changing after listening to today's episode?
Oh my goodness. I would invite everyone to go back to the acronym BIKE, and define it for yourself. Right? Who are you? how can you be inquisitive and look for insight in your own life and learn from every aspect of it. Share kindness and love, not only with yourself, but true kindness and love, not niceties, not politeness or manners, true, genuine kindness.
Mhm.
And be engaging, right? Ask questions, be curious, and just get on that bike.
I love
Keep
it.
moving forward.
Absolutely. I love it. Where can our listeners learn more about you and the work that you do?
I am on social at Tonya Kay Herb, and there are underscores between each name. So you can reach me there, or you can hit my website at tonyakay.co.
Perfect. Amazing. I want to thank you, Tonya, so much for being here, for sharing your insights and expertise. This is truly an amazing conversation. So thanks for being here today.
Gia, it's been so fun. I love this conversation.
Keep
Thanks for
on doing
having
the
me.
work that you're doing.
Thank
So
you. You
needed.
too.
Thank you. And of course, you can visit my website at Gialacqua. Reach out to me on Instagram at Gialacqua. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. This is Gia signing off with gratitude for your time and energy. Our mic drops, but the movement continues. Until next time, your next chapter is waiting. Take care.
That concludes another empowering episode of Your Future Starts Now. Before we wrap up, I want to thank this incredible community of high-achieving women. Your energy, resilience, and commitment to growth are the driving force behind what we do. If you enjoyed today's episode, please rate it, leave a review, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Your feedback fuels our mission to empower high-achieving women just like you. And of course, share Your Future Starts Now with the extraordinary women in your life who are also on a journey of healing and empowerment. Connect with us on social media, share your thoughts, let us know what topics you'd like to explore in future episodes. Stay connected on Instagram at Gialacqua. I encourage you to carry the energy of this conversation into your day and keep on supporting the incredible women around you. Until next time, remember, your next chapter is waiting.